again. So, conference, if you're wanting to take a seat, please do. Conference, I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our General Secretary, Christina McAnea, the first woman to lead UNISON and the first female General Secretary of any of the big trade unions.
Vice President, Conference, thank you so much for such a warm welcome. And I want to start by thanking all of you for all of our activists and the NEC for all the time you give to this union. Whether we agree or not, it's still your time that you're dedicating to the members of our union. To the activists who stood here at the rostrum yesterday and shared their kind words of support and solidarity with me, I do want to say a huge personal thank you. You have no idea what it meant to me. And I want to thank all of our guests and all of our visitors who are here today. You're very welcome. And of course, I also want to thank our amazing staff. What a brilliant conference you've been pulling together. And what amazing work you do every single day for our members. So welcome to our first in-person conference in 3 years. My first opportunity as General Secretary to speak to you in person at our National Delegate Conference. We're here to celebrate the amazing work that you, our activists, do and that our members do every day. To remember the fantastic support you've been giving to working people despite the huge pressures you've been under for the past 2 years. But instead of being able to celebrate, we find ourselves smack bang in the middle of the worst cost of living crisis in 70 years. And the poorer you are, the higher the price you pay. Struggling families forced to choose between heating and eating, food banks stretched to breaking points, mental health services on their knees, 1 in 4 people missing meals, and 700,000 more children in poverty than there were 10 years ago. This Tory government should hang their heads in shame. But instead, ministers are going around telling those hardest hit by the crisis to work more hours or take on an extra job. So, Conference, worried about how you're going to feed your family? Don't upset yourself. The government's got some great ideas for that. Spend more time making meals from scratch, in between the extra hours and the extra job that you take on, of course. Now, my mother was a great cook. She worked mainly as a school cleaner or a school meals worker when I was growing up. And she made soup every single day to make meals go further. But being a low-paid worker, even she would have struggled to do that on 30 pence a day. So, worried about keeping warm? Don't be. The government says, do some star jumps. Go and sit in a bus for several hours every day. And worried about the cost of childcare? No problem. They're going to cram even more children into nurseries, so we're sorted there. They're so out of touch. They don't understand us because they're not like us. Sorry, I've got something in my teeth here. What was that about the Downing Street wallpaper? I mean, seriously, £840 a roll. And apparently that doesn't even include the cost of putting it up. Conference, for that money, I'd expect wallpaper to walk in 2 legs and apply itself to the wall. Be in no doubt, Conference, this crisis is down to political choices. The Tories choose not to increase taxes on the wealthiest. They were dragged kicking and screaming into a windfall tax. They stubbornly refuse to increase capital gains tax. Instead, the government is increasing national insurance, a tax on working people. Because if you get your income from stocks and shares, and I'm sure loads of you do, or you own 4 or even 4,000 buy-to-let properties, you pay nothing more. How unfair is that? Poverty is a choice made by the powerful. Instead of making political choices that help the less well off, this government is happy to let those who unashamedly profiteered from the pandemic off the hook. Almost £10 billion of our money wasted on useless PPE. What's being done to get that money back? And how about another windfall tax on the indecent profits made by the companies who blatantly exploited this pandemic? And what about the £4 billion worth of fraudulent COVID loans given to employers? Where are the prosecutions for that? Just the other day, we learned that the Chancellor failed to insure against interest rises on government debts. And Sunak's blunder has cost the taxpayers and us a staggering £11 billion. Let's face it, we could really do with that money now. We reckon that £10 billion would give every single public sector worker in this country a decent pay increase. Instead, we see the very people whose courage and dedication got this country through the pandemic now having to rely on charity. And that's why we're taking to the streets on Saturday, and I really hope to see as many of you as possible walking with us beside the UNISON banner in London on Saturday. We're witnessing the dying days of a corrupt, out-of-touch government, a government that's hanging on to power but has no ideas. Unlike the government, dealing with the cost of living crisis is our main priority. It's top of our agenda. Our pay claims are in. We don't know what the offers will be. But just this week, at our service group conferences, I urged all of our branches to go away and get strike ready. Because, Conference, that's where we're heading. Our ballot in local government in Scotland opened last week, and I and this union will do everything we can to get a yes vote. And while we know it's tough to reach the thresholds, we saw that in our local government ballot earlier this year in England and Wales, I genuinely believe now we can do this. Because look at what we do in branches, look at what you do in branches. 8,000 workers, mainly low-paid women in Glasgow City, voting again for strike action and forcing the government to do forcing their employers to come back to the table at the 11th hour. The strike and fight at Sandwell Leisure. The strike over pensions at Dundee University. All the other things we do. Getting the real living wage at Cranfield University, Cambridge County Council, and for care workers in Greater Manchester. Getting outsourced staff brought back onto Agenda for Change national pay rates. In Pennine Care, North and East Lancashire, Cumbria, Reading, Bedfordshire Health, Conference, the list goes on. And just last week, getting Circle workers brought back in-house in Lanarkshire Health after a brilliant campaign. And what about about our rebanding and regrading claims that we do, especially in the NHS, and how many employers where we forced them to do this. In Glasgow and Clyde, the Highlands, Sheffield, Barnsley, Wigan, Pennine Care, Essex, and in all 5 trusts in Northern Ireland. What a fantastic achievement. Because rebanding healthcare workers and healthcare assistants puts between £1,500 and £3,000 into the pockets of literally thousands and thousands of low-paid workers. And these are just a few of our successes. Conference, these successes don't happen by magic. You don't go up to the employer and ask for it and they say, oh, you know what, that was a great idea, I wish we'd thought of that. Wins like these take hard work, and every single one of them has to be fought for. As with the wider campaigns we do in our communities, like the brilliant campaign in Northern Ireland to extend free school meals, like the campaign in Wales to get a national care service. Conference, this is the power of our union. Boris Johnson's government talks big but does little. Meanwhile, we get on and do the things that make a positive difference to our members' lives. So, Conference, it's been a tough year in many ways. We haven't always been pulling in the same direction. There were times when it felt like we were focusing far too much on internal issues of the union, on the bureaucracy of our union. Well, Conference, we employ a team of dedicated staff who are well able to deal with the bureaucracy of our union. What we, the elected leadership, need to focus on is the fight back. The fight to defend our members, and we do that by being united against a common enemy. A Tory government determined to look after its own and let us down. To be honest, I think some parts of the union have found it difficult to have a woman leader. As the first woman General Secretary, perhaps I should have been better prepared for that. I've certainly been treated differently from some of the male General Secretaries. I've had challenges and barriers, more challenges and barriers put in front of me, including legal challenges. And it makes me think of the barriers our female reps face in workplaces when they're trying to go on with the job of representing their members and being leaders in their branches. Because what defines our union is our commitment to fairness and fighting discrimination. And that means respecting the proportionality and fair representation built into our rulebook, but not being limited by it. It means acknowledging we are a union of 1 million women members, and we have a responsibility to speak up on the issues that matter to them. It means not ignoring women's voices and concerns. It means we speak out against racism in society, and yes, Conference, in our union, wherever we see it. And fighting for the rights of disabled members everywhere, because disability isn't something to be fixed. It's part of so many people's work and lives, and it's society and workplaces that need to be fixed to deal with this. Conference, it means never forgetting that vigilance is the price of equality. It's easy to think it's done, but then you see something like the terrible discrimination, even hatred towards transgender people. I was so glad to see the debate there. You see the impact the pandemic has had on LGBT+ people. The rise in mental health issues, the isolation, feeling the need to hide again. It's sad to see that inequality and intolerance are ever present. But you know what, Conference? It was great to see so many men get up in the debates yesterday to speak up for our women members. Because we, as a force for good, must be part of the fight back. We're a union that always looks outwards, and I'm very proud of the work we do on the wider issues in society, like launching our own plan for dealing with climate change by looking at the role public services play. We work closely with unions across the world fighting oppression and violence, whether that be in Palestine, Colombia, Turkey or Myanmar. And of course, more recently, we've been supporting the trade unions in Ukraine. We've seen the generosity of our branches in raising funds and supplies for that beleaguered country, as well as great bravery, great acts of bravery, like our members in London Ambulance, who took 10 ambulances and essential medical equipment to Ukrainian health workers. Fantastic achievement. And let's not forget the Russian tanker carrying liquefied natural gas that was turned away from the Isle of Grain in Kent when our members refused to unload it. And while we're dealing with the big issues that face us, I'm very conscious that you and members elected me on a manifesto of change, and I'm delivering on those pledges. The Branch Support and Organising Fund, the UNISON College, our member participation and engagement projects, our recruitment and organising strategy are all now delivering for members. Conference, I'm absolutely committed to being a member-led union, one that works in partnership with its staff, with all the parts of the union, and one that makes sure no one single part of our union can dominate. Of course, our National Delegate Conference is paramount, because this is the one time our branches can come together to decide the future of our union. Because you delegates, you have the power to make change happen in our union. This is your conference, and it's the opportunity to do just that, to set our priorities, to determine our key agenda items. It's time to reflect, and it's time to press the reset button if you think we need a change of direction. Conference, it's also been a difficult year for me personally, and I wasn't sure right up until today whether I was going to share this with you, but I've decided I will. So in February this year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I've had surgery and radiotherapy, and thankfully it was caught early. But it brought some, thank you. I feel I've had to do loads of little videos because I had to cancel loads of going to speak at events this year. So if you were one of the ones that had to have a little video, I apologise, but that was probably the reason why. But having this brought some things home to me very clearly. It gave me an up-close and personal view of the NHS and the amazing job that our members do. But I also realised I was nervous about telling people, given all that's happened in the past year. And it made me realise that if I, as General Secretary, were nervous about telling people, what was it like to work somewhere where you don't get paid sick leave, where your employer would absolutely use this against you, and where taking hospital appointments meant using up all your annual leave. I also wanted to share it with you because I'm conscious that I'm going through something that literally thousands of our members are either going through or have been through, either personally or through supporting a loved one or a family member. And because in the end, although I have my family who've been fantastic, sitting up there, I'm also part I'm also part of the UNISON family. And I'm lucky to have had my treatment so quickly because long NHS waiting lists, the postcode lottery, mean not everyone is as lucky as me. So what we are facing in our public services is too important for internal splits. We have to focus on what matters. And I know it can be overwhelming when you don't know what's coming down the road. But look what you and your members have already done. Because you are the ones that went into hospitals, worked in ambulances when we had no vaccine, before we even knew there would be a vaccine. You are the workers who cared for older people and people with learning disabilities, people who couldn't wear masks but still needed up-close and personal care. You are the police staff, the environment agency workers, the energy workers who still turned up to work to protect the public. You are the ones that held the hands of dying patients while the Tories partied in Westminster. Conference, our members don't run away from a crisis. You run towards it. You're part of it. You help to fix it, and you help others. We demanded a public inquiry, and I will make sure the sacrifice of our members is not forgotten by this country or by the Tories. So are we going to sit back and let the liars, cheats and fraudsters in Westminster tell us we don't deserve a proper pay rise? Are we going to let them tell us it's time to practice pay restraint? Well, are we? Just the other day, Boris Johnson said, the union barons will once again protest. Well, Conference, he got that right. We will protest. And if we have to, we will strike to protect our members and protect public services. We already know we have to work with other unions. We do it every day. You do it every day in workplaces. But if we're going to take a stand, that's essential. And if we're going to be united as a movement, we have to be united as a union. It's our job, the job of everyone here, as leaders of our union, to give our members the hope and confidence that we can change things. We know that working people need a union more than ever. So I'm urging you to take back a message of hope to your branch and to your workplaces. Talk to members about what they can do and about what we can do together. Recruit and organise other workers so that we remain strong. Conference, I absolutely know we can do this. So let's get our members to look up. Let's encourage them to be positive and hopeful by showing them that we're ready for the fight. Because we will win if we're organised and we're focused. And Conference, I do believe we have reason to be optimistic. It feels a bit like the tide is turning. A government hostile to trade unions is in terminal decline, led by a man who's lost the support and respect of large parts of the country and his own party. And finally, Conference, this is the biggest challenge we will have faced in a generation. And the government should be in absolutely no doubt. UNISON is strong, UNISON is resolute, and UNISON is up for the fight. Together we rise, Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and wow, thank you for those stirring words, and isn't it great to be able to have these events back in person and to be able to be addressed. So thank you so much for that. Conference, that brings us now to the end of business for this morning. So as I said earlier, the debate on motion 1 will pick up later on. Can I just remind delegates that Conference Hall will be closed during the lunch period. Remember that for safety reasons, no